Revelation 14. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads.
All right, now this is another reference to the 144,000 from Revelation chapter 7. And in Revelation chapter 7, it specifically says those who were sealed were 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. I think what it means is God saving a remnant of the Jews, some from each tribe of the Jews, eternally. And I don't know how literal we should take that number, or if it's just symbolic numbers saying he would preserve and save and mark and seal to preserve from eternal destruction some from each of the 12 tribes of the Jews, or if we should take it literally. But these are 12,000 times 12 tribes of the Jews, people who were marked with God's seal for salvation. Now, in chapter 7, it immediately follows these 144,000 with the great multitude from all nations, all tribes, all people, all tongues, who are also in heaven worshiping God. So it's not saying that only 144,000 would be saved and they would all be Jews. It says that God marked and saved some of the Jews, and there was so many other people that it couldn't be numbered. But this talks a little bit more, there's a few more details about the 144,000.
And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and like a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth.
Now, if this is the same 144,000, which I would assume it is, they're all Jews, and they're the only ones who could sing this new song. So maybe it has something to do with how being a Jew and, going through the plan of salvation as a Jew. If you're a Gentile, you can't sing about how your people came through the Jewish plan of redemption because you're a Gentile. It wouldn't be your song.
These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they remained virgins.
Okay, so the 144,000 Jews, they were only ones that could sing the new song, and they were also virgins.
They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as firstfruits to God and the Lamb.
Okay, so, maybe these virgins were children and not even adults, that they had done nothing to earn their salvation, but it says God purchased them as firstfruits. He says, I want to purchase some virgin Jews from each tribe to represent the Jewish heritage, put my seal or mark on them, and I'm going to save this many Jews. Again, I don't think it's a literal number, just a representative number.
No lie was found in their mouths. They are blameless.
That's another indication that it could be children. It'd have to be real young children, because children learn to lie pretty quick, and adults get pretty proficient at lying. So maybe these were young children from each tribe that God preserved and marked and saved as representatives of each tribe of the Jewish nation.
Then I saw another angel flying in mid-air, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people.
All right, so this angel who could fly had the gospel to proclaim to everyone on earth. Now, a lot of times people say, God has no mouth but my mouth. God has no hands but my hands. And God depends on me to do his work. And I think that's foolishness. God has power to do anything he wants. He has angels to do anything he wants them to do. And here's an example that you don't have to have a preacher to spread the gospel. that you don't have to, especially you don't have to have a full-time paid preacher with benefits for God to get his message out. He has an angel who has the ability to proclaim the gospel to every nation, tribe, and language on earth. God is not dependent on us in any way whatsoever. We are dependent on him in every way.
He said in a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come."
All right, so now in this book, where the context is imminent fulfillment, something that is going to take place very soon, we've got this angel that proclaims in a loud voice, "Give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come." Now, people often have this idea of the judgment day, where there's only one judgment day, that all people will come before God at the same time on the same day and wait for their turn to be tried by the judge. And that day has not come yet, in many people's perspective or ideas. But this message that the angel proclaims, which is infallible, the gospel that the angel proclaims is infallible. The gospel that humans proclaim certainly has room for error. But this angel says the hour, not the day or the season or the month or the year or the time. It says the hour. It is at hand. It's imminent. It's about to take place. Jesus, when he came in body, said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Him and John the Baptist both came proclaiming that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Get ready, be prepared, because time is now. It's going to happen in your lifetime. Jesus said that there are some of you standing here that won't taste death until you see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So the kingdom came in the first century. Jesus and John the Baptist came preparing the way for the kingdom, and it came during the time of the Roman Empire, just like Daniel prophesied.
"Worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water." A second angel followed and said, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries."
Babylon the Great is probably talking about Jerusalem. The second angel followed and said, "Fallen is Jerusalem, Babylon the Great. The hour of judgment has come, and Jerusalem is about to fall." That's what this book is about. It's about the Roman Empire. It's about persecution of Christians. It's about the imminent fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel about the beasts and the kingdoms and the statues and the images that Daniel saw. And here we see the hour of judgment has come. Fallen is Jerusalem, Babylon the Great. Now, I'm making that assumption, but I think we could go look through scriptures and confirm that Jerusalem is called Babylon.
A third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image, and receives its mark on their forehead or on their hand, they too will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest day or night for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of its name." This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God who keep his commands and remain faithful to Jesus.
All right, so this is a stern warning that whoever has faith in Christ, whoever is a Christian, should not fold to the pressure of the Jews and the Romans to live a secular life that denies Jesus and worships the Caesar. It says don't do that. This is a stern warning that whoever gives in to the pressure of the world to follow after the Jews or the Romans will be destroyed, will be punished, will be tormented. Now, a lot of people like to use this passage or this section to say this is a literal description of what hell will be like. And I don't think that it should be taken like that. This entire book of Revelation is filled with symbolic imagery, and I'm not sure any of it should be taken at face value literally. Now, all of it is representative of something and means something, but I'm not sure any of this vision should be taken literally, like the 144,000 virgin Jews, 12,000 from each of the tribes, and only they could learn the new song, and they also didn't lie. No, I don't think that should be taken literally. It should be symbolic or representative, but not exactly literal. Now, in this same section, we should not think that this is an exact literal description of hell. And also, even if it is, if you take this exactly literally, it's not representative of you and I today, because it's talking about those who worship the image of the beast, which was the Roman Empire. So it would only be applicable to the first century Christians who worshiped the Caesar and the beast. So it's not literal, unless you want to be consistent and say everything is literal. But I try to be more consistent and say everything is symbolic in this apocalyptic book, where symbolism is just constant throughout.
Then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Write this: Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on."
All right, so people still act like today the worst thing that can happen to any human is to die. That death is the ultimate punishment or negative result of anything. But a Christian should have a different view. A Christian should not fear death. A Christian should view life after this life as more blessed than anything we could imagine in this life. So he's given this, I think third angel was given a stern warning that no one should fold to the pressure to the Jews and the Romans to live a secular life. You should rather choose death over life in that situation.
Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labor, for their deeds will follow them.
So life for a Christian after death on earth results in rest from labor.
I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man, with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe."
So I think this would be Jesus. And, when you use a sickle, that's really what the Grim Reaper has. The Grim Reaper that everybody is afraid of, that brings death, has a sickle. And he goes out into the field of wheat or whatever, and he slings this tool with a sharp blade on the end, and it cuts down the wheat. And you just sling it back and forth, and you're cutting down all this wheat, and you can take it in and process it. But here we have Jesus with a sickle going out into the field to harvest the crops, to cut it down and to gather it up and to process it. For in this same time, in the first century, when this is written about imminent fulfillment of the things that Daniel talked about, we have Jesus taking his sickle, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. It's time to harvest the earth in the first century.
So he who was seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel who had charge of the fire came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle.
So we've got many different angels, and here we have one that has been given charge of the fire, maybe from the altar. So these different angels have authority over different things.
Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the earth's vine, because its grapes are ripe. The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as the horses' bridles, for a distance of 1,600 stadia.
180 miles. Blood flowed out of the press as high as the horses' bridles. So I'm saying 5 feet off the ground. So blood flowing through the streets 5 feet deep for 180 miles. That is a lot of blood. This is talking about massive destruction. There's been several warnings to Christians about things that were going to have come. There's great destruction. Matthew chapter 24, Jesus talks about when you see these things, you need to flee to the mountains. And woe to you if you're pregnant or nursing in those days. And, he also said that the temple would be destroyed and not one stone would be left on another. And I believe I've seen references to Josephus talking about the blood in the streets of Jerusalem in 70 AD at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem. I just did a quick search for Josephus and blood in Jerusalem and found a quote where Josephus said that there was so much blood in Jerusalem that some of the fires that were set were quenched by the blood flowing in the streets. So we're again talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the death in Jerusalem that was supposed to take place, that it was also the will of God, and that Jesus was harvesting the earth, and this angel was pressing down the grapes in the wine press, and blood was flowing out. So this wasn't a victory for Satan in the destruction of Jerusalem. This was the work of God and Jesus. They were giving their stamp of approval for Christianity and marking the end of the Jewish system. And it was very nasty from our perspectives with all the death and blood. But that was Jesus doing his work to confirm Christians and to deny the Jewish system to continue. It was the approved system before Jesus came. It was the God-ordained system before Jesus came. But when Jesus came, it did away with the Jewish system, and Jesus established his new kingdom where he's the king for all eternity, and that is the Christian church. That is Revelation chapter 14.